suffering is. Psychological suffering is being caught in a conception. And that conception can be about deprivation, it can be about abandonment, it can be about being defective, it can be about being abused, subordinated or subjugated. It can be ideas about not having your needs met in a way that sort of reverses, and you can presume that you won't be happy unless you have your needs met, and you begin to function with that type of narrow orientation. Fear of failure can drive the desire for success, and yet that drive for success is caught in the terms of the fear of failure. That's why it's these impressions, which I call schema, are quite insidious, and we operate in terms of them. Non-conceptual awareness is outside the terms of our emotional wounds. It is outside the terms of conception. So, and it is also, it is meditation. It's an equivalent of meditation. And it too is experienced, and it produces mental equivalence, if you will. In other words, the exposures that we had as children leave impressions, and exposure now to non-conceptual awareness leaves its impressions, and it impacts the whole model of our existence. Non-conceptual awareness, it tends not to be conceptual, philosophical, but more along the lines of sensory. And we expose ourselves to not jumping to conclusions, not inferring meaning. We continue to observe, and with that practice we notice that the world around us does not collapse. What is revealed is that the world is, so to speak, the world existence is functioning free of conceptions. So in other words, conceptions are not the ground of being. Existence is not dependent on conceptions. This points to enlightenment. Enlightenment is neither the witness nor the object being witnessed. It is non-dual. And to point that for you, I would suggest you think about the paradigm or the model of the metaphor of dreaming. When you dream, you're lying there asleep, you're not doing anything. But in your dream, there's an object of you, and there's an entire world of events occurring. When you have lucid dreaming, you become aware that you're dreaming, and you recognize that, yes, there continues to be a center point, a perspective point in your dream that you identify with yourself and other events. But all those other events, all the things that are occurring around you are also you. And sometimes in lucid dreaming, we become aware of the presence of the dreamer, and that's a presence awareness. And non-duality is very much the same way. Folks, we dream. Because it represents what's going on. There is, in fact, a dreamer, if you will, and that dreamer, of course, is ourselves. But it is what we are, not who we are. It's not a conception. It is nature itself, and we are indeed embodiments of nature itself. So I'm pointing to non-conceptual awareness. I'm pointing to what may be called an awakening experience, if you will, the transcendent experience. That's what that is, when you dream lucidly, you're having a transcendent experience. Everything in the dream is you. You can realize absolutely everything is you, and yet there's this tendency to be dualistic. Same thing here. We tend to be dualistic. We tend to feel that we are operating in nature, but we are now quite clear that we are also nature itself, looking at itself. That is the non-dual perspective. We enter that perspective how? Well, by recognizing that what we're looking at, is what we are. And many of us are confused about what is subjective and what is objective. The fact is, conceptions of every sort are objects. And very often we point to ourselves as me over here. This is the subjective witness right over here. Not so. For example, Carl Jung, the innovator of depth psychology, discussed that the unconscious, that which we are at the deepest realm, is collective. What does collective mean? Collective means it's all embracing. There's nothing there. In other words, it's all inclusive, one without another. So we look for that impersonal self. So where is my unconscious? Well, here it is. Take a look. Outside of you in the so-called objective field, there's no person. Nobody's raining. Nobody's blowing. The wind is not being blown by anybody. It's impersonal. And indeed, it is you and myself. This is the unconscious. So in the placement of our attention in non-conceptual awareness, we actually reverse the subjective feeling. Who is looking? What we're looking at is what is looking. And we rest in that. And do we need to be stilling ourselves? It might be helpful. Do we need to still ourselves? Well, not necessarily. We can do it walking. It's simply just seeing, recognizing, seeing yourself. And now we're caught in this dualistic conversation. You're either objective or subjective. Well, in non-conceptual awareness, it collapses. The subject-object collapses, and we are simultaneously both subject and object. As you can imagine, we do imagine ourselves to be living in reality, and yet we recognize we are reality. Same thing in the dream. Think about the dream. You see yourself in the dream, but you realize that you're the dreamer, the source of all manifestation in the dream, time, space, all that is there in the dream, by the way. Has infinite diversity, tremendous. Suns, distance, math, objects, just remarkable. And these are all, call them conceptions or schemas, and we too are functioning in this field also. So I encourage you to think about learning to meditate in a non-conceptual fashion. Think about my discussion, because that will help in the placement of your attention. That will also influence the way that the mind is conditioned. That means it will loosen all conceptions, all these ideas that you think you are. Loosening them allows them, it provides for you new possibility and new options. So this has been a conversation about mindfulness-based anxiety reduction. We'll continue it throughout the year. Thanks for tuning in.